Hello, I'm Phil Saxby. I'm the Wellington organiser of this Cannabis Referendum Coalition Conference. What we needed was a really big starting point, and this is it.
I'm from Auckland and I drove down yesterday because we want to make a coalition of all of the groups involved in cannabis law reform so that we're all working to the same playbook.
Cannabis is a product that I think is beneficial to the country both socially and economically, but also it's in the Bible. It's Genesis 1:29. It says God provideth the herb, and so in the Bible there's a lot of different stories, but there hasn't been a counter verse that says the Lord does not provide the herb. So
the way I see cannabis or any other drug, it allows you to think in a different way, look in a different way, and kind of understand yourself better so you can actually do things better for yourself in the future as well.
The science of cannabis is pretty clear that it's significantly less harmful than alcohol and cigarettes. It's even less harmful than coffee. So why is coffee and pharmaceuticals and alcohol and tobacco, all of these more dangerous classes of drugs, legal and cannabis is not? It doesn't make sense.
This is an incredible plan. Our society's obviously gotten the relationship to it extremely wrong. We have the opportunity to correct that. What happens with this referendum is not just about the people in this room and what we want. There are many communities and people throughout Aotearoa who are going to be affected by what happens. We're going to work together on this because we have to. The cannabis use is already a normal thing in this country. It's just we pretend that it isn't, and somehow we've got to break through that.
I just wanted to pick up on that. One of the most funny kind of pieces of commentary that I've seen around why politicians don't want to jump into the cannabis debate or any kind of drug law reform debate was a tweet, classic. The point was that perhaps politicians don't want to talk about cannabis because they'll be depicted in the Herald with a Rasta hat and smoking a joint. And fair enough. I mean, as soon as I jumped into the medicinal cannabis debate, my very first cartoon in the Herald appeared with me with a giant bong.
My name is Chlöe Swarbrick. I'm a Green Party MP based in Auckland Central. Our confidence and supply agreement includes the commitment to have a referendum on or by 2020 to legalise cannabis. No one should be saying that cannabis comes with no harm. I think that's grotesquely irresponsible, but I think that we have to realise that a prohibitionist approach which shuns any responsible regulation causes greater harm. I think when it comes to cannabis use in particular, probably the biggest mythology that we have to bust is around the stereotypes and prejudices as to who are cannabis consumers. The binding referendum, the kind of mechanism that I would prefer is that we create legislation first, pass it through the House, and then have a simple, straightforward, would you like to see cannabis legalised per whatever the act is. And that will kind of remove any grey area from the debate, so we don't get a situation whereby the likes of Family First can wave around edibles and stir up as much moral panic as possible.
I'm Dr. Arik Crampton. I'm Chief Economist with the New Zealand Initiative, which is a Wellington-based think tank. I'm here because I'm interested in drug policy reform. There are so many options that are better than what we currently have. I've got my own preferences about what a good system could look like, but really the range of space available is pretty broad. I think we need to have a good framework that allows entrepreneurship and innovation, while at the same time making sure that we're not experiencing undue harms.
And especially now that we've got legal sale properly in 10 American states. Donald Trump's America, a fifth of it is far more liberal than New Zealand, and we like to see ourselves a little differently than that.
I think the key takeaway for me is the importance of getting the most conservative voices you can supporting the cause, and so it's great to have people like Arik here today in the research that they've done.
I'm Manu, Caddie. I'm the CEO of Hikurangi Cannabis Company. We're based in Aotearoa. Yeah, so we're the first company to receive a medical cannabis cultivation license in August of 2018. You know, we're just looking around the world at how the legal markets have evolved, and there's great opportunities for New Zealand in that space. I support cannabis legalisation in New Zealand because we come from a community where there's a lot of whānau that have been affected by its prohibition and criminalisation. Many of them rely on it for their income, and it would be great if they didn't have to look over the shoulder and hide from police to be able to grow the plant and sell it.
My name is Shona MacLeod. I'm a graphic designer, and I've just recently created an educational platform aiming to share medicinal cannabis community stories through Instagram, trying to shift this negative stigma around it. Studies that I've researched have shown that in Canada and the US alone, stigma is still prevalent post-legalisation. So there is a huge misconception that the stigma would stop once there is the change in law, but it needs to keep going. People need to be educated about it, the effect of it, how detrimental it is to patient access, use and treatment
they would jump up and go, oh, it's a
I've been smoking cannabis almost on a daily basis, and I don't mean just once a day, ever since the early 1970s, 70, 71, 72. I dispel all the myths about cannabis. I like to dress up and look good. I run my own business with my husband. We've got a backpackers business. We get up every day and we want to do work, you know. We're workers, we work really hard. And I have many hobbies.
It's good to get an overall view of everybody that's here. It's quite a broad base of people. It's not just one sector of the community, which is good to see. Well, for Māori, we've always had a bad press when it comes to cannabis in New Zealand. We're probably the worst statistics when it comes to that problem. For me, I'm looking at changing the mindsets of our people and changing the whole stigma around cannabis, and that it's not this big evil weed that hemp hysteria had built up back in the old days.
I think this conference shows that actual fact that there are positive aspects of cannabis, especially in regard to medical areas. Polynesians, Māori included, seem to be really heavy in the stats in regard to hospitalisation, in regard to bad health, in regard to criminal activity, and there's a significant part of that which is cannabis associated.
So I think that there's a lot of people who think that legalisation of cannabis opens up a free-for-all. It's exactly the opposite. What we currently have in the shadows is a free-for-all, because drug dealers aren't checking ID.
Cannabis legalisation will reduce the harms of cannabis. It will also create potentially up to $500 million worth of tax revenue, create 15 to 18,000 new jobs in New Zealand. So it's really a no-brainer. It makes sense from an economic point of view, from a social point of view, from a health and welfare point of view.
We should not be criminalising people for smoking a plant, and everything flows on from that.
Are you happy with how the conference has gone so far?
Yeah, I'm very happy. It's exceeded my expectations.
Awesome.